Hello everybody, welcome to the first episode of Backseat Comic Debriefs. Today, we'll be taking a look at Thor, God of Thunder. Alright, kicking it off with admin for Thor, God of Thunder. First off, the publishing dates were 14 November 2012 through 17 September 2014. Creators, Jason Aaron was the writer. He's also done a recent run of Thor as well as the War of the Realms event. Artists were a little bit more various. Overall, though, Asad Ribic was the main one. However, Nick Klein did issue 12. Ron Garney did issues 13 through 17. Ji Young did issue 22. And R.M. Guerra did issue 25. The penciler was Jackson Butch Geiss. Inker was Tom Palmer Sr. Colorist was Yves Forcina, letterer was Joe Sabino, and the painter for several of the issues was Augustine Alessio. I apologize if I'm butchering that. And then finally the editor swapped over a little over halfway through the run. It was Lauren Sankovic for issues 1 through 18 and Will Moss for issues 19 through 25. The run length was 25 issues overall, with 4 story arcs consisting of 5 issues each, and then 4 stories that were single issues, those being issues 6, 12, 18, and 25. Cover price throughout the run was $3.99 if you were able to buy them off the rack. Next, we're going to be opening the run a little bit more, getting into key bits. I'm going to start off just covering the story arcs very briefly. So first off is going to be issues 1 through 5. Which is essentially the God Butcher story arc where they introduce Gore the God Butcher, and there's 1 through 4 and 5 raw, and then I've got issue number 2 actually slabbed already. Hard to see that cover, but we'll get into the covers a little bit later. And I've got that slabbed because it is a pretty significant key issue. We'll get into keys in a minute though. Next up is the first single issue story, which is What the Gods Have Wrought. Issue number 6 is the origin of Gore the God Butcher. Again, we'll get into that a little bit later. The next arc is going to be God Bomb, which is probably the best story in this entire run, if you ask me at least. No really big keys in here, but a fantastic story that we will get into the plot of once we get to digging in. Following that was the single issue story Once Upon a Time in Midgard, issue number 12. Next up is The Accursed, issues 13 through 17. And that's going to get into, it's going to leave Earth again and be dealing with some elves. Again, we'll get into that a little bit later. Next was issue number 18, another single issue story, Days of Wine and Dragons. That's a brief little, both funny and sad interlude. Now we're going to get into the Last Days of Midgard story arc, which starts getting into some apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic stuff, and there's actually 3 stories going on here, one in the past, one in the present, and one in the future. And finally, issue 25, the last issue in the whole run, and that is another single issue story, Tales of Thunder, The 13th Son of a 13th Son, Blood and Ice, and Unworthy are the different titles going on in there. From there, we are going to get into key issues. Let's put that aside real quick. Now, there are quite a few key issues in this run, some bigger than others. And we'll start off just with issue number 1, it being the first issue in the series. Next up is going to be issue number 2, as it is the first appearance of Gore the God Butcher. I apologize for the glare in that Mylar, but I want to keep the book protected, the slab protected. Next will be issue number 6. Again, it's going to be digital image only as it's packed away, but it's going to be the origin of Gore the God Butcher, as well as the first cameo appearance of the Necro Sword, which is at least thought to be null. I don't know if that's been confirmed not yet. Issue number 8 is going to be the first team appearance of the Goddesses of Thunder. Issue number 12 is going to be the first appearance of S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Roz Solomon. Issue number 14 will be the first team appearance of the League of Realms. Issue number 19 is the first appearance of Dario Agger. Issue 20 is the first appearance of Dario Agger in Minotaur form. And then finally, issue number 25 is the first cameo appearance of Jane Foster as Thor. Next up, to finish the key bits portion of this debrief, is going to be Variance. So first up, as with every Marvel number 1, there were several variants. So this is the A cover. The B cover was done by Daniel Acuna. It is a 1-50 incentive variant. 1C was done by Asad Ribic. It's a 1-25 incentive. 1D was done by Joe Quesada, 1-100. 1E was also done by Joe Quesada. It's the 1-150, and it's just the sketch version of the 1D. 1G was a blank sketch variant, and 1H was a Scotty Young baby variant. Next up, issue number 2. Here is the A cover again. The B cover was a Daniel Acuna 1-50 ratio variant. Following that, issue number 3. Again, the A cover, and then the B cover was once again a Daniel Acuna 1-50 ratio variant, or rather incentive variant. Issue number 4, here's cover A, and cover B was an Oliver Coipel 1-50 incentive variant. For issue number 5, again, cover A, and then the B cover was once again a 1-50 incentive variant, this time done by R.M. Guerra. For issue 7, the 7B variant was done by Gabriel Del-Otto. Once again, I believe 1-50 incentive variant. For issue number 9, the B cover was done by Julian Totino Tedesco, and it was a 1-20 incentive variant. 13, the B cover was a 1-50 ratio done by Walt Simonson, and then 13C was a movie photo variant, 1-15 ratio. For 14, the B cover was a Dave Johnson 1-20 incentive. 14C was Lionel Castellani 1-25. And 14D was another Lionel Castellani 1-100, simply the sketch version. And finally, the 14 New York Comic Con Humberto Ramos exclusive variant. For 19, the B cover was a 1-75 Clay Man variant, and the 19C was a 1/100 Simone Bianchi variant. The B variant of issue number 20 was done by Nick Klein and was a 1/50 variant. 24, the B variant was a Pascal Campion 1/15 variant. And finally, for issue 25, the B cover was a 1/25 Milo Manara variant. Excuse me. The 25C was a Simon Bisley. 25D was done by R.M. Guerra. And finally, the 25 Nashville Tom Rainey Wizard World Nashville exclusive variant. At last, we're going to delve a little bit deeper into the overall story, or stories rather, of the Thor God of Thunder run. I'm going to try and keep this brief if I can, but we're going to get to the digging in portion of the review. So first off, the plot overview. The first story arc right here, the God Butcher, takes place, so initially it opens up 1100 years ago. Thor is a young god. He's lustful, bloodthirsty, and hungry for the perceived glory of battle. He's fresh from defeating a malevolent frost giant who had been terrorizing a local Viking village when a small girl screams in terror off in the distance. She's found the head of a man, she claims, but Thor knows that he was more. The severed head belongs to a god. In the present day, Thor hears the prayer of a child on the planet Indigar, hoping for rain on her desolate world. He appears on her planet and answers by bringing a rainstorm and revealing an underground water current. After celebrating with the residents of Indigar, Thor inquires as to why the girl hadn't prayed to her own gods, and is informed by an elder that they do not have any gods on their world. Thor decides to investigate and discovers that the palace of the gods of Indigar is empty until he finds a room with a chained door. Upon opening it, he finds the bodies of the Indigaran gods rotting, dead for hundreds of years. And he knows who did this. He's met him before, over 1,000 years ago in Iceland. The future. Millennia. Allfather Thor sits on his throne, looking over an empty Asgard. Broken, missing an arm and an eye, he grits his teeth and decides that if he is to die, it will be in battle. He will not let his story be that of all Thors, and vows the death of Gorr the God Butcher. So over the course of this arc, Thor hunts Gorr in 3 different times, and we learn who exactly this monster Gorr is. We watch helplessly alongside Thor as gods across the 10 realms are murdered in cold blood. Gorr is always one step ahead of Thor, the god of thunder, but in all 3 timelines, Thor refuses to give up. Now in issue 6, What the Gods Have Wrought, as I discussed briefly before, we learn more about who Gorr is, why he is the way he is, and why he hates gods so much. He was abandoned by his own gods. He lost his family, his home, his entire planet, because in his eyes, his gods were too busy fighting each other, trying to prove who was greater. And when he sees 2 of them crash to the ground, one of them has a weapon. As the god asks for his help, enraged, Gorr takes the weapon from him and kills him with it. Next, in God Bomb, we once again see all 3 timelines of Thor. However, we begin this story with Thor finding himself at the end of time, but it's not just the Allfather that is here at this point. All 3 are somewhere at the end of the universe. Present day Thor joins the Allfather to finally find Gorr and end his story. Meanwhile, young Thor finds himself enslaved by the God Butcher, along with his future granddaughters, the goddesses of thunder. And while they and the other gods believe there is no hope, young Thor simply doesn't know what it is to give up. He incites a rebellion, and, encountering his future selves, takes on Gorr the God Butcher one final time. Issue 12. Once upon a time in Midgard, Thor returns to Earth, to his favorite place to spend his time off from battling giants, elves, and god butchers. He runs into his longtime love interest Jane Foster and meets a potential new one in S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Roz Solomon. In the Accursed storyline, we begin in Niflheim, the realm of ice and death. Masteron prison is being infiltrated by dark elves looking for something, or, as it turns out, someone. They free Malekith, the king of the dark elves, with some sacrifice, and he begins on a rampage throughout the realms. Thor must bring together a team, which becomes the League of Realms, from across the universe to stop him. In doing so, he unites a group of beings that would have never been able to work together otherwise. They fight battles with elves, giants, and prejudice, and more, as they work to bring Malekith to justice. In issue 18, we read through Days of Wine and Dragons, where Thor awakens in a daze in a small village on Earth and in the mouth of a dragon. The villagers are in a fit of rage, claiming that the dragon is responsible for burning and pillaging their village. However, Thor and Skabag, as the dragon is named, claim it was another, or more accurately, a group of others, who are responsible. They bring them to justice and resume celebrating, drinking, and pillaging together for a time until Skabag gets carried away and, unfortunately, Thor must stop him. In the Last Days of Midgard story arc, we encounter Dario Agger, the CEO of Roxxon, as Thor and Agent Roz Solomon work to stop him from implementing a plot to strip the Earth of every resource possible in order to maximize profits. Agger wants to know how he can hurt Thor in order to prevent him from intervening, and he discovers that the weakness of the Thunder God rests in the safety of a small town in the Midwest. Thor and Agent Solomon must find a way to take down Agger and Roxxon in order to save the planet. In the future, Allfather Thor and his granddaughters, the goddesses of thunder, confront Galactus as he attempts to destroy the barren rock that once was Earth. Finally, in Tales of Thunder, which is the main arc of issue 25, we watch as the goddesses of thunder at the end of time read stories lived by their grandfather Thor. As they read through the different tales, they learn of different eras in Thor's life and are enthralled. Finally, they come upon a previously unknown saga in the life of the god of thunder, titled Unworthy. But as they begin to read the story, the Allfather chases them out of the library, enraged. To wrap everything up, I just want to get into the opinion section of Thor, God of Thunder. Overall, we'll start with art. I believe personally that art and comic books should do most of the storytelling. I think that in this case, pretty much all of the artists involved did a fantastic job of that. It was not only quality art, but they were able to depict what was happening so that the writer could focus on more dialogue. I also personally enjoy realistic looking art to a point. I don't want Alex Ross to be doing interiors of every book that I read, but I thought that the artists in this case had a good compromise of kind of cartoony and realistic. So overall, I give it probably an 8 or maybe even a 9 out of 10. For the writing, as I said, I believe that it should only be used to tell the parts of the story that the art can't. And there are always going to be portions of a story that have to be written out. And in the case of this run, I think Jason Aaron did a really good job of exactly that. There was very little exposition in any of the story arcs. Now, I give the writing a 9 out of 10. For the story, I love the majority of this entire run. However, of the stories, I think that Last Days of Midgard was probably the worst. The whole down with big corporation X has been done over and over again, in my opinion, and I think that while he did a good job of telling this particular story, I think that Aaron could have come up with something much more unique and intriguing as with the rest of the stories in this run. So now overall, would I read it again? Yes. And finally, would I buy it again if I had the chance? Yes. Thank you everybody for checking out this review of Thor, God of Thunder, first episode of Backseat Comic Debriefs. I hope to continue to improve and get this whittled down to probably closer to 10 minutes overall. I know this one was long, still trying to kind of get a better idea of how to make it all work, but I actually, believe it or not, took out probably 5 minutes of footage for this, so we'll continue to improve there. I've got better lighting coming as well, but I didn't want to delay this any longer, otherwise it would take forever. So again, thank you for checking it out. Please subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, and I hope to encounter you at the next one.